Hey everybody, PBR announcer Matt West, along with my good friend rodeo announcer Garrett Yerrigan, and we're here to introduce you to some of the greatest athletes in the world.
Every week we're going to take you under the American hat of some of the most prolific rodeo athletes from all over Western sports. Get ready, this is going to be a great time.
This is Positive Times Talk, and it starts right now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Positive Times Talk. Garrett back with you this week, joined by a history setter this year in the world of professional rodeo, Taylor now Hanchey. Many of you may remember Taylor Jacob, National Finals Rodeo barrel racer. She has since found the love of her life in a calf roper named Shane. And now Taylor Hanchey and chasing, like I said, history. First ever double qualifier for the ladies, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. First off, Taylor, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Busy. There really is no off season in rodeo. So I know as soon as we get done here, you said you're jumping in the truck, and where are you headed this week?
I'm going to Belleville tonight and then Edna on Friday and Saturday.
Any weekends off in the foreseeable future?
No, not at all.
Yeah, no rest for the wicked in this rodeo business. Let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Just kind of get the history on Taylor. What was the spark in you as a young child, or when you decided that, hey, rodeoing looks like a pretty cool way to make a living?
Yeah, I was always into horses. My mom rode, and then I started riding naturally when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I've rode my entire life. My dad would often complain that I was at the barn too much because he wanted me to be doing chores and stuff like that. And so I've always been that way. I've always loved horses, and then I'm competitive too. So it was a good mix of both.
Absolutely. So did you do all events growing up, or did you focus mainly on one event specifically?
Yeah, I did all the events. Before I ever made the finals in the barrel race, and I said I was a breakaway roper to begin with. I just had a really good barrel horse. And the first year I went and rodeoed and made the finals, I had my barrel horse and I had a breakaway horse, just as a buddy horse. At that point, there wasn't any breakaway ropings at the pro rodeos. So I eventually sold my breakaway horse and went all in on the barrel racing. And now, because of the breakaway roping being at a lot of rodeos and the tides have turned a little bit, I don't have a horse that's ready to make the finals in the barrels. And I told Shane, I said, I knew I missed it, but after being competitive in the breakaway roping, we were talking one night. I said, man, I've missed being competitive. And he's like,
Right.
Well, you've always been competitive. I said, but I wasn't. What was I being competitive at? You know, like just it. I missed that. Like, as much as I hate losing, I missed winning and losing. You know, the ups and downs. I missed that. And so I really enjoyed being back in it.
So when you saw the kind of, I'm going to say the rebirth almost of breakaway roping, and I guess the birth of it in the professional ranks, talk about those initial reactions. I mean, was it like hey, I get to dust off the rope again? Or, what was kind of the first reaction when you saw, like, the American, for instance, back in 2019 adding breakaway?
Yeah. So during the American, I thought, man, I want to do that. And I did. I went ahead and qualified for the semifinals and that. But I would say I just kind of dabbled in it. I would do it, and then I would, I was working at that point. So I would just kind of do it here and there when it was convenient. And then last year, after watching the NFR, I said, I think I want to do this. Like, I want to get serious about it. And Shane was like, oh boy, because we already spend so much time out there at the roping arena with him. And so he knew that if I was going to do something all in, that meant a lot more hours and a lot more of everything, really. And so really after watching the NFR last year, I said, I think I want to try to do that. And then I'll be completely honest, I just kind of kept working and roping when I could, but being a little bit more serious about it. And then this summer before we left, I said, okay, I want to go to these good rodeos and see if I do any good. And I did okay at them. And so it just kind of started snowballing. And eventually I'm like, it was probably halfway through the year. I said, okay, I'm all in. And Shane said, well, about time, you know? So he said, what were you before? What was his question. He said, what was that before? I'm like, that was like 90-10. So now we're at 110.
That was just testing the waters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much, this is going to sound a little bit like a silly question, but how much time do you guys get to spend in the practice pen together?
A lot. And that's something that we've gotten better at, is practicing together, because I mean, honestly, since Shane's known me, I've been a barrel racer and kind of a breakaway roper. And so the fact that I went from just kind of doing it occasionally to like, hey, this is my job and I need to be 100% serious about this. It was a learning curve for both of us, as far as him helping me and me taking the coaching. And it hasn't all been great. We definitely have our little disagreements. So
it reminds me a little bit maybe of that meme that goes around every once in a while, the husband and wife. I'm sorry what I said to you when we were working cattle.
Yes.
Is it similar to that? I'm sorry what I said to you in the practice fan.
Yes, absolutely. And what's great is we both know now, like, when each other needs, like, just give each other like 20 seconds to just kind of take a minute. And so at first we didn't know when each one needed that, but we've got it down now.
Talk about horsepower. What, going back to when you saw breakaway roping catching steam, what was the process on getting the horse that you now have and have qualified to the NFR
on? That's Shane's horse. So I just took one of his over. Lucky me. And probably when I was more dabbling in it, he was just letting me ride kind of the backup string. And then when I got serious about it, he let me on Pam, which is one of his really, really good ones. And I'll be completely honest, she is a huge advantage. She's great. She does everything the best, really. She scores, she runs, and she stops. And she's really low-headed, so it's easy for me to see. And so when I miss, it's usually my fault, which is great and bad at the same time, because I don't have any excuse whatsoever. But I'm fortunate. I ride a great horse.
Yeah. And I'm no horse clinician by any stretch of the imagination, but I often see a lot of guys, when they're training or even just, tuning on tie down roping horses, they will enter the breakaway. So, how much does that maybe help Pam then in return in the tie down roping event?
If you ask Shane, it probably doesn't help her at all. I don't know if I help her or hurt her. She's 18, and so I do think it's a lot easier on her to be a breakaway horse than a tie down horse. But there were a few rodeos that Shane and I were up the same, and so I would ride her, and then Shane would ride her at the same rodeo, and that's pretty cool to see her be able to excel in two events back to back like that.
So that's actually a great lead to my next question that I didn't realize until you kind of brought this up before we started the interview. You and Shane did not get to, as we call it in rodeo, buddy together. You guys didn't get to rodeo necessarily together. If you were up the same day, that was just kind of coincidence, right?
Yeah. I'm a very tight person. I don't like to spend money. And that was one of the things Shane told me this summer before I left. He said, don't be counting pennies in your head. I know how you are. That's not going to help you win. And so that it was hard for me to decide, like, okay, well, Shane's going to go rodeo and I'm going to go rodeo, and we're going to be in two different rigs, and we're both going to be paying fuel, and we're basically going to just pass each other on the highway, and that it still is hard for me to fathom, like, hey, I'm paying diesel and he's paying diesel. It's just a lot,
Right.
And so because we're not able to rodeo, that's what we had to do. I went with two girls, Cheyenne Guillory and Tacey Webb, a lot, which helped as far as fuel cost goes and that. But I don't like it. I think if really rodeo is a family sport, and I think they should support families being able to rodeo and go together. And so I would like to think that eventually they'll get that fixed, and husbands and wives will be able to rodeo and buddy together. And I do think that's a reason that a lot of other women don't rodeo, is because they're not able to go with their husbands.
So, not to get too off in the weeds of the technical side of rodeo and stuff, but now, did you girls enter through Procom, which for those of you watching this that don't know, Procom is the entry system for the PRCA and the Rodeo Cowboys. And I know the barrel racers enter Procom. Did you breakaway ropers use Procom also?
Yes, so we use Procom as well, but our books are a day after the other rodeo events. So like as the barrel racers and the calf ropers and all that will have their callbacks, and then we enter. So we can try to get up with our husbands, but there's so many girls that are rodeoing that I said earlier this year that your chances of winning the lottery are probably just as good as getting a perf at some of the rodeos. I mean, there will be 75 girls asking for a perf, and you're like, holy cow, you know?
Yeah.
So
let's get into the rodeo season this year. I guess it would be foolish to say that the NFR was not on your goals for 2021. So going through the season, incredible article, by the way, in the Breakaway Roping Journal, and I was kind of freshening up with that before we did this interview today, and it's incredible that before Salinas, you were 28th in the world. And climbed to 15th by the win there, won nearly 5,000 there. So that just goes to show how close the breakaway ropers were in money. But let's go back even further to Canby, Oregon, the tour rodeo that got you into Salinas. Talk about your feelings going into Canby. I mean, was it a little bit of kind of a Hail Mary last chance to push the end of the season, or what was the thoughts at Canby?
So I'll be completely honest. When I left for the summer, I mean, I hadn't rodeoed at all. I think my first rodeo was in May in Mercedes, and I went down there, and then I didn't enter another like pro rodeo until June.
Wow.
Well, that's back to back, but I wasn't going hard at that point. And so when I left for the first time, Tacey Webb and I went together over the 4th, and I think we went to like 8 rodeos in 10 days or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of wanting to get my feet wet and see what it was like, and go a little bit, but I didn't want to just fully jump in. And just because I didn't know what to expect, I didn't know if I was going to be able to win. I didn't. Right. I was just getting my feet wet, and right. So I did okay over the 4th. I didn't do great by any means, but I did all right. And so then we came back home, and Cheyenne Guillory asked, she's like, do you want to go? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, I need somebody to go with. And, she was in the top 15 since after the 4th of July, but she needed to go and win just a little bit more. And basically I kind of went to go with her, and I said, okay, well, I want to be in the top 30. I want to be able to get into all the buildings for next year, because that'll set me up. And so I said, all right, I'll go. And we entered rodeos here and there, and she was really good in the tour standings. And she said, I kind of need to go to Canby. And we were in Caldwell, Idaho, and we were going to drive 9 hours to Canby and then 9 hours back. So an 18-hour round trip for $1,000 at a rodeo. And I'm like, here goes the pennies in my head. This does not make sense, But Cheyenne needed to go because it was a tour rodeo, and I don't even know if I had many tour points at that point myself. I wasn't paying attention to it, And so I said, all right, well, we'll go, And so I did great at Canby, and that helped my tour standings. And then I went to another one, Lewiston, Idaho, and I did good there, and it was a tour rodeo. And it just worked out, is all I can say. When it's supposed to happen, you can't stop it. I don't know what the quote is, but it's something like that. And I just did really well at the tour rodeos, which got me into Salinas, which was the difference maker for me.
Talk about roping at Salinas, because that's kind of a beast all in its own. I mean, it's very unique setup, and guys will tell you it takes a lot of horsepower at Salinas. Talk about getting to rope there in the breakaway.
Yeah, so before Salinas, I went to Pendleton, and Shane and I talked about it before, and I figured that I would come from the head box at Pendleton because I was riding Shane's horse, Cy, and he's just he's a little bit better if he comes out of the head side. He goes right better than he goes left, so we figured, okay, we'll shoot him right, and we were overthinking it for sure. And so I was able to practice out of the head box before Pendleton, and that didn't go well. But that had given me an opportunity to come from the head box for Salinas. And at Salinas, I rode Cy as well. And so it's pretty cool. Before we went, I told Cheyenne, I said, I'm excited. And she's like, why? I said, well, because you're either going to do really good or really bad. She's like, and you like that? I'm like, yeah, I do. So it worked out for me. It didn't quite work out the last day like I had hoped, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, the article in Breakaway Roping Journal talks about, obviously you won just shy of 5,000 there, catapulting you to 15th, and then came Fort Worth. You and Hope Thompson were right there, 15th, 16th, and I think the article says you both maybe got no times that day. Wasn't the greatest exhibition of roping, but were you pinching the pennies that day? Were you counting the pennies, or what was the mentality in a situation like that where you did? I mean, you tried, you gave it your best, and it it just wasn't your day. But I mean, were you in the back of your mind trying to do the calculations?
I left all the calculating up to Shane. He had actually told me at Salinas that I needed to win second or better, and I won third. And so I just had a kind of a piece about me that whatever was meant to be would be. And so I walked out of the arena at Salinas and thought, my original plan was to be in the top 30, and I'll be in the top 30. Yeah, it's a letdown because I got close enough to make it, and I didn't capitalize on the opportunity. But I was just like, it is what it is. And so that night we were waiting to fly out to go home, and he had counted the pennies and done all that. And he said, okay, you're $123 behind Hope. You have Fort Worth left. And I'm like, okay. He's like, so basically it's a one-header. And I'm like, okay. And so I go to bed. He is way more nervous the entire time throughout the whole deal. And
that was going to be my next question, was who was more nervous through all this, you or Shane?
Oh, him all the way. And it is, I agree. Like, I'm more nervous for him and he's more nervous for me because we want each other to do so good, but we have absolutely zero control over it, And so I went to bed, and something wakes me up a few hours later, and I'm like, did you wake me up? He said, yeah, I've been calculating. And I'm like,
oh,
okay.
no.
Okay. He's like, you're actually $120 ahead. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. And he's like, so you're ahead. I'm like, okay, it's still a one-header. So
yeah,
I'm going to go back to bed.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. I said, did you wake me up to tell me that? And he's like, yes, you needed to know. And I'm like, okay, I'm going back to sleep. So he was definitely way more nervous than I was.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So final calculations, $138.17. I mean, that's crazy. And that's what ultimately, as a fan of this sport, more than an announcer or whatever, but as a fan of this sport, I love that time of year, that playoff time of year. I mean, it's so crazy to me. I'll just be completely honest. I've never competed. I'm not a real cowboy. I just dress the part, that whole joke. But it's just crazy to me that all of you athletes rodeo for 11 and a half months, and it comes down to the last week. I mean, it's so exciting. And I love that time of year. I mean, watching, and not just the breakaway this year, but watching Wyatt Denny in the bareback riding and Taylor Santos in the tie-down roping. I mean, all those guys that you rodeo for nearly a year, and it comes down to the last week of the season just to get to the finals. And with the money in Vegas now, a chip in a chair, you have a chance. But man, it's got to be, and especially you being right there in the hunt, it's got to be so exhilarating that every run is so important.
Oh, I'm the same way as you. I get giddy and I watch all the events, and I know who's on the bubble and who needs to win. And so, like, every rodeo, at most of the rodeos throughout the year, I watch, like, just kind of, oh, here they are, But at the end of the season, I'm in the stands and I'm watching and I'm going, okay, they need to do good. They have a chance, And so I love that time of year. And I've been on the bubble in 2016 in the barrels. I was on the bubble and I didn't make it. And I knew that feeling. And once I realized I was on the bubble, I was like, okay, well, now I know what that feeling is to not make it, we don't want that to happen again. And so I've been on both sides of the bubble. I've made it and I've not made it. And obviously making it is a lot sweeter, but it stinks to be on the other side too. You've put in the same amount of work and you've done everything that you could, and it just doesn't work out,
Right. So I want to get a little backstory on you and Shane. Is there any cool stories, funny stories? Shane's not sitting by you, so you can tell embarrassing stories. What is the love story there? How did you guys meet?
We met rodeo, and so in 2013, I was a rookie, and it's funny because I knew who Shane was, and I just watched him from afar, and I thought he was like kind of cocky and not super intelligent, and I broke down and he ended up picking me up, and after talking to him, I realized, okay, this guy's not a dummy, and then I still think sometimes he does come off a little bit arrogant, but I think you have to be that way in this sport. If you don't have confidence in yourself, you're behind the 8 ball. So I don't think it's cockiness. I think it's just knowing the work that he's put in and being confident in his abilities.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys, did you guys get married in this year or 2020?
2020.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Because you guys just celebrated a year's anniversary. Congratulations on that.
No. It hasn't been a year. No. Was it 2021? I'm terrible with dates. Absolutely awful. I accidentally forgot Shane's birthday one year.
Oh, not good.
It's so bad. Okay, it's on September 30th though, and I know when his birthday is. It's September 30th. I just didn't know that day was September 30th, if that makes sense. You know how you just get like, oh, is it Monday or Tuesday or whatever? Right. Well, so I just sort of forgot. And that was a big deal for Shane. Birthdays are not big for me, but for Shane they are. And so it was a little bit of a rough.
See, that's almost the best and worst day for a rodeo cowboy's birthday, because you would think it would be so easy to remember last day of the rodeo season, but it gets lost in last day of the rodeo season.
Yeah, exactly. After I roped at Fort Worth, I said, well, happy birthday. I didn't rope good, but I made it. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's my birthday present. I get an NFR back number 2.
Yeah.
That's funny. So I guess $1 million question, being a rodeo couple, how in the world did you pick a date to get married with? Because there is no off season in rodeo.
There is no off season. And I thought I beat the system because I was like, okay, COVID is happening. There's no way that the California rodeos are going to happen. Like, just no way. Not in California, not with COVID. And so I was like, let's just do it during the normal California run. And he's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we plan said wedding for the California run, and then the California run happens. And I'm like, what? I would have never thought. And so there were some people that didn't make it because of rodeos. But at that point, we were engaged for a really long time because we couldn't pick a date. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? We're doing it, and it'll be fine.
Yeah. And I remember, and speaking of the engagement, this just popped in my head. I remember, did he propose to you in the practice pen?
Yes, he did. Yes, it's a funny story because I was riding my barrel horses up there, and he normally doesn't come up to the barrel pen with me. But that day he's like, I'm gonna ride while you ride. And I'm like, okay, he's like, I'm gonna exercise my horse. And I said, all right, And so it was odd to me, but I didn't think anything of it because we had talked about getting married like 2 years before, and then nothing happened. And I was like, well, whatever. Maybe he changed his mind, but he's still here. So I don't know. And he told me, he's like, I hit a barrel. And he's like, go set up the barrel. And I'm like, you go set up the barrel. I'm going to change horses. And he's like, go set up the barrel. And so we almost get in a disagreement because he's wanting me to get off my horse to give him an opportunity. And so eventually it worked out. And my mom had hid the camera behind another barrel. And so she got the camera out, and it all ended up working out.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. So there's a couple of pictures from the Romantic proposal in the practice pen. Nothing screams rodeo couple more than getting proposed in the practice pen.
For sure. And the other thing is I also try not to get much sun on my face because I don't want to look super old. And so I wear this big like gardening hat sombrero thing. And afterwards Shane's like, you realize how long it took me to actually ask you, because every time I was gonna ask you, you looked like a gardener. And I'm like, well, I mean, you don't want me to look old either one day, so you're welcome.
Oh, that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the last things I want to talk to you about that I think maybe puts the icing on the cake, if you will, for the history setting title that you got this year was it's actually a quote from Shane. Well, you're the last first time qualifier in both events. You're the last one. There will never be another first time one. Talk about that. I mean, that's a pretty I had never thought of it that way. You know, we in all the headlines, it's been, you know, first time, you know, female qualifier in 2 events of the NFR, but barring them adding pole bending or goat tying, you know, you essentially are kind of slamming the door on history. That's got to be a pretty heavy thing to have in your resume, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm excited about it, and I know there will be other girls to come behind me, and I welcome that. You know, I think it'll be cool to get to see the girls that have done both and that are gonna step up to the pro rodeo level and do it as well. And I'm excited to see where everything moving forward. So this is just the beginning, really.
Yeah. So, and you're exactly right. So many rodeos since the American in 2019 have added. The big story here recently has been the addition of it this coming year, Rodeo Houston. You know, being, like you said, now top 15 in the world standings. I saw a little smile pop on your face there. You're going to get to rope one in NRG Stadium. That's going to be pretty exciting.
I'm excited. Houston is one of the best rodeos to go to as a contestant. They are so great to the contestants. And so I've missed being there, and maybe one day I would like to be there in both events at the same time. That's the goal for the future for me. But it's a great rodeo, and to get that opportunity to be on that platform in front of you know, most people that live in Houston haven't seen breakaway roping, and so there's going to be a lot of people that see breakaway roping for the first time, and it's exciting.
I think that's a good point. There's a lot of rodeos all over the country that they had never seen breakaway roping before, and you know, it's been so well received. It's a fan friendly event. It's very simple to understand. Rope them clean around the neck, and I mean, it's fast. It's exciting. I know the fans in Cheyenne, when they added it back in 2019, also obviously didn't have a rodeo last year, but then again this year, the fans really appreciate it and understand it, and all the rodeos that I've been to this year, it's been a great addition. I mean, always love to have the ladies compete more, and now having the second event, I think it is great. And I don't know if you're a Parker McCullum fan or not, but they announced yesterday that he's playing there March 12th. So maybe, I don't know if you get to like kind of trade or whatever, but if you're a Parker McCullum fan, you might want to be there March 12th.
I actually didn't know that. And what's unfortunate is we have to enter before they release the whole lineup of the entertainment, but because that is something that plays effect into when I want to go. Lucky for me, it's close. So maybe Shane and I will for sure split up so we can be there, you know, for an extended amount of time to get to see some concerts. And there you get to watch in the back of the buck and shoots. And so it's really great. It's a great rodeo, and I'm excited to go.
That's awesome. What are I hate to put you on the spot here because they, you know, every one of them has something special. What were some of your favorite rodeos to go to this year?
Well, Salinas, obviously, for obvious reasons. But what's funny is somebody had asked me before Salinas, they said, what's your favorite rodeo? I said, well, I've never done good there in the barrels. I said, but I love Salinas. You get to go to the beach. They have the most amazing fresh fruit. They have flower stands on the side of the road. It's just, it's beautiful, and the food is great, which is also another big thing to me. And so I said, that's what I said. Okay, this year Salinas I'm going to do good at, so it can really be my favorite rodeo. So Salinas was great. Pendleton was very different, and so I
Yeah.
kind of like the setups that are a little bit different and a little bit challenging, and so I enjoyed Pendleton as well.
Now, last week, as we're recording this, last week Shane hosted his big calf roping that he has every year there in Giddings. Did you have to help produce it and play wife, or did you get to be a contestant last week?
Well, so I was a contestant for the breakaway, but then the breakaway was on Saturday, and then the tie down was on Sunday. So Sunday I was timekeeping and being a runaround, and so I actually enjoy getting to keep times just because I get to watch super closely, and so it's fun.
Did you do any good there in the breakaway?
I did not, and Shane didn't do any good either. And I'm like, it's a shame we put on this great paying roping, and neither one of us won any money. But we didn't. I said, well, the roping was good. Our part wasn't very good, but the roping was good.
Hey, you can just blame it on having to be a producer, and your mind was split in a bunch of different directions. You got excuses on that one. It's okay.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
What is goal for 2022? Is it chase the world championship? Is it qualify in both events in the same year? What's on the bucket list for 2022?
2022. So I would like to obviously make it again in the breakaway. I'm a realist at heart, and so I don't think I have a 5-year-old barrel horse that's really nice and has been doing good around here in Texas. I just don't think he's quite ready to go out and compete at that level, because the barrel racing is so tough at the pro rodeos. So you've really got to be on your game. And I know my horse doesn't have the confidence that he needs quite yet. And so I'll go to a few pro rodeos in the barrels here and there and kind of pick and choose. But I'm really realistically, I think like 2023, 2024 would be more realistic for me to try to make it in both events. You never know, though. I would like to be able to think that I can make it again next year and not have to be gone the entire time. I still have my barrel horses, and I still have my young horses that need me to be home and riding them. And so I would like to be able to go and rope and then come back and ride my young horses, and I would still like to do both. And Shane has kind of said, like, maybe you should just put your barrel horses on the back burner and really focus on breakaway roping. And I said, that I don't want to. I want to be able to be great at both. And I know that's a lot of hard work, and it's going to take a lot of time. But that's one of my goals. And so I'm willing to work really hard to get it done.
No, I mean, that's awesome. And I think that's something that you or Shane or anybody in you guys' status and rodeo would tell young people, is set goals. I mean, have those, 1 year, 5 year, 10-year lifetime goals. And if that's yours in 3 to 5 years is to make it in both events, I commend you for it. And I'm going to be a fan cheering you on to do it. It's exciting. Like I said, going back to the perspective of not just being an announcer, watching you guys compete week in, week out, but as a fan, that's exciting now to know that, when we're watching Taylor Hanchey next year or, 2-3 seasons down the road, we know that in your mind, a goal is, by gosh, you want to be at the NFR in both events. So commend you for it. I know you said you got to hit the road here pretty quick, headed to another doubleheader weekend. So thanks for stopping by with us, and best of luck at the National Finals breakaway roping this year.
Thank you.
Oh, and tell Shane good luck too. Yeah, I mean, if you talk to him anytime soon.
Yeah, I did ask. I said, "Are you going to be able to come and watch?" He's like, "I don't know. I might be signing autographs that day or something." I'm like, you butthead.
I can hear him saying it. Well, thanks again for stopping by. Appreciate all of you for tuning in for another episode of Positive Times Talk. Always remember, keep those American hats on top, little positive times underneath, and we'll talk to you soon. That's this week's episode of Positive Times Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Follow American Hats on all your favorite social media platforms, and be sure and tune in with us again the next time we join together